Afternoon. Welcome to yet another fantastic, exciting, riveting Zoom meeting. This is the Superior Court update, and we're the Board of County Commissioners. And I am, by way of introduction, I'm John Hutchings. That makes it legit. And the chair of the board. And we also have Vice Chair Commissioner Ty Menser and Commissioner Gary Edwards in the House. We have Ramiro Chavez, our county manager, and Robin Campbell, our assistant county manager. And we have the presiding judge, Judge Eric Price. And we have Ms. Pam Hartman-Beyer, the court administrator, in the house as well. So do you have anything to start us off with, Ramiro?
No, this is just a regular update.
Okay. That's what I expected.
It may not take the whole hour.
Okay. So who wants to judge? I'll defer to you, sir.
Okay, well, first of all, thanks for providing the opportunity to provide an update. We've been very, very, very busy in the last 7 to 10 days trying to adjust or predict and then adjust to what the different news that was coming out last week. You know, the governor having had previously a May 4th date, and previously our Supreme Court had an order in place that postponed a lot of non-emergent matters until May 4th, and we were expecting movement on that last week from both of those sources, the Supreme Court as well as the governor, and got them on 2 different days. We had got the Supreme Court order last Tuesday, Wednesday of last week, that had a couple of significant provisions to it that we had to adjust to. And then, of course, the governor came out, and you all know full well what the governor had to say, sort of extending stay at home to May 31st, but also talking about his phases. The Supreme Court order was the one that had more direct application to us in terms of our previous orders. We had, as we had talked in our last update, we had an order in place, emergency order number 3, that had court operations essentially emergent only, in custody, defendant only operations until May 18. That was the date we had picked way back in the beginning of March, May 18. And then when the Supreme Court order came out, she moved, or the Chief Justice moved essentially that date. It's a little more complicated than that, but essentially moved that date to June 1. So she had previously had May 4. She moved that to June 1, but she had the other additional provision. And if I'm telling you something you already know, I apologize, but no jury trials until July 6th. So her order says, collectively, the courts in the state of Washington are not going to have jury trials until July 6th, both criminal and civil. So that was a little bit different. We had already been summoning juries for the possibility of beginning jury trials in May. And we had to do that back in April. Obviously, we've called that off. So we have in fact, sitting on my desk is what I believe to be a final version of our emergency order number 4. And that emergency order we expect to come out. I expect to be able to sign it this afternoon when we're done here at the meeting. And that will be an updated version of what our Superior Court is doing. The principal, the takeaways from that emergency order are that we're sort of dividing our operations. If you sort of put your FJC hat on and then our main campus hat on, we're sort of doing 2 different things based upon the differences in the work that are being done. But with respect to main campus, we are continuing our sort of emergency only approach for the most part until June 1. So we've slid our May 18th date to June 1, with the exception of some non-emergent civil work. We're actually going to start that on May 22nd with telephonic appearances only. We will maintain our only half-day openings throughout the month of May. So main campus will be open only 8:30 to noon until May 31st, and that's all on the emergency order. And then on June 1, we're planning on opening full days and having an extremely modified criminal calendar that goes into effect on June 1. We're going to hear some out of custody matters starting June 1, and we're going to radically change our criminal calendars to try to accommodate social distancing and more time-specific calendaring. We want to avoid having too many people in the courtrooms, and an issue that I know that I've talked with Romero and with Robin about, the concern about having people in the hallways. If we open up our calendars to out of custody matters like we had back in February, we'd have way too many people in hallways. There'd be no way to socially distance. So we've had to really take a really hard look at how we could possibly do our criminal calendars in a modified way that would not result in too many people in the courthouse and the courtrooms. So we've come up with a plan that we think will work. We've been in contact with both public defense, private bar, as well as the prosecutor's office and corrections. We've got buy-in on our approach, and we expect to have that more publicly disseminated either today or tomorrow, those plans that go into effect June 1. With respect to family and juvenile court, they are going to open up full time on May 18, but with a radically closed down plans. They are going to be doing more dependency work. There's a real backlog of some of the dependency cases, and given the really critical and sensitive nature of those cases, they've come up with a plan to be able to accommodate some more of those hearings, but with, again, remote hearings, Zoom hearings, and social distancing. And they felt in order to do that, they needed to open up the courthouse more with a more full time. So they're doing that on May 18, and then they also on June 1 will begin an expansion of those calendars. So we've got sort of a phased in approach that we're trying to move forward with. We are still, and again, Robin and Romero know this, we're still really focused on trying to get some guidance and some help on how we can have these public health restrictions while still having the courthouse open. How do we put tape on the floor? Do we have one direction flow in terms of the public coming into the courthouse? Dr. Yu's memorandum talks about signage on buildings. We have some complications with that because if we have a sign that says "Go away if you have a cough," but we're still requiring people to show up to court, and if they don't show up, we're going to issue a warrant. There's a disconnect there. How do we accommodate? How do we deal with that? Some of those challenges we have at this point a couple of weeks to try to work through those. But those are the challenges that are in front of us. So anyway, long story short, we're planning on issuing the emergency order this afternoon, emergency order number 4. It will not only attach the Supreme Court order, but it will also attach Dr. Yu's memorandum from April 28th.
There we go. Thank you. Hey, so Judge, the dependency cases that you're backed up on, does that include adoptions, or is that completely different? Well,
dependency is different from well, I mean, they're sort of related. I suppose if you end up in a dependency that doesn't, go the right direction, you can end up with an adoption. But those I think conceptually are sort of two different ideas. I have yet to see actually the details. Our chief judge, Judge Wilson over at FJC, has been working through the details of how they're going to grow those calendars. They have the same philosophy, or they're applying the same philosophy of really trying to do time-specific calendaring, shorten the caps. The word we use is to cap calendars to a certain volume, all to sort of minimize flow into the courthouses until we can, till things improve.
But is there a backlog of adoptions?
Pam, do you know of the adoptions?
Yeah. So we started, I believe, the second or third week of emergency operations. And I'm sorry, I would be on the video, but I keep freezing up.
That's fine.
So we started the second or third week of emergency operations doing at least 2 adoptions in dependency cases a week. So I don't think we have a huge backlog, but we anticipate continuing to do adoptions through this. And I can go pull those numbers if there's something specific you want to see, Commissioner.
Nope, I was just curious. When I was thinking dependency, I was thinking, oh yeah, what about adoption? Commissioner Edwards, go ahead, sir.
I guess, I'm sure you know, Judge, we don't get to talk amongst the three of us except when we're in meetings about specific topics. So what I'm about to say might not be reflected by my seatmates, and Robin may give me a dirty look, but I just want to bring this up anyway. We got $15 million or something that we're going to be utilizing towards dealing with this issue. We can't backfill, we can't do a lot of things with the money, a lot of restrictions on it. And I know that we are already budgeting a certain amount of money to upgrade your telecommuting abilities, I guess is the best way I can put it. Dennis gave us a little bit of an overview this morning about that. But I think you should be thinking, I'm just making a suggestion. I never would tell the judge what to think about or do, but I would like to see you folks take this on as a challenge to think into the future how we may be conducting our whole legal affairs activity with maybe juries that are remotely put together, an expanded, very much expanded process than what we're trying to do with what Dennis brought to our attention today a little bit. We discussed it. So I just think it's a golden opportunity and it's directly related to this situation that we're in. So it makes the money, I believe, eligible as long as we don't backfill the dollars that we had already set aside through ER&R or something like that. But if you've got an ability to make the courts much more efficient than they are today, I'd sure like to have you guys kicking that around and see if there isn't something that could come from it.
Hey, Gary, I was watching Robin and she did not shoot you a bad or dirty look at all. Hang on, Ty, do you have a response to that at all, Judge?
Well, I know that as we're aware of that money, and obviously and also aware from the elected officials meetings of the limitations, some of the limitations on that funding in order to get revenue shortfall and so forth. One of the challenges I've spoken with Romero about is we have space challenges in terms of jury trials. If we now have a little bit of breathing room with no trials till July 6th, but we still have an awful lot of criminal defendants that are going to be sitting in custody until that time. And we have done an initial non-expert, my word, assessment of our ability to do jury trials and jury selection with the space that we currently have. And we probably can only do one jury trial at a time if social distancing becomes, maintains for a long period of time. Now, that's a capacity issue that is problematic for a number of reasons. And so, we've talked with, or at least begun discussions with Romero about whether or not we can find some alternatives generally to our current space for expand our ability to do jury trials. I mean, you just can't have 6 people, or in our case, 13 usually people sitting 6 feet apart with jury boxes that we currently have. And so we've got some challenges there. Now, you sort of mentioned virtual juries. That's I've been asked that question before, and I think my initial answer is I have a hard time wrapping my head around doing a jury trial with virtual juries.
Yeah.
But there is some opportunity to do more hearings remotely, Zoom hearings and so forth. And we are definitely doing that at FJC, and we're doing that with drug court, and we're doing that in a number of other venues. I could conceive of having witnesses and so perhaps appearing more by remote means. But no ideas are off the table. But right now, we have some real ominous things in our future if social distancing remains required.
And just to add on to that real quick, I do know that the Supreme Court is putting together a jury trial re-engagement panel where some of those remote type of jury services are being looked at. Like Judge Price said, I think a lot of people have a hard time understanding how a remote jury trial would happen, but it's one of the things that they are looking into to see what the best practices would be and if it could work.
Very interesting. Go ahead, Ty.
Two questions or comments. One is just, I think Romero's mentioned this, but I haven't heard Robin's take on it, that whether we can create more courtroom space, if we can create more shelter space for homeless because of social distancing requirements, can we use the money to create more courtroom space for the need to keep people safe as we reopen? And then the second question for the judge is, you mentioned Zoom hearings being used at FJC and you kind of alluded to it just a minute ago, but to what extent do you see Zoom playing a role in how you guys are going to be doing things on main campus?
Well, we're already doing Zoom with drug court. The civil judges, those judges that are doing some of the civil work, have talked about whether and how to have more Zoom hearings with some of the civil motions that we hear. We haven't at this point moved forward with that idea. But we are going to be doing a lot of telephonic hearings. Civil motions are quite a bit different in terms of maybe I don't want to say it that way, but the gravity of a criminal hearing is different than a civil hearing in terms of constitutional rights and right to confrontation. All those sort of basket of rights that attend to a criminal hearing are a little different with a civil hearing. So I think at this point we've been more comfortable with a telephonic kind of mode in our civil hearings on main campus. We are looking at and have looked at doing remote hearings on the criminal matters. I think I mentioned maybe our last updates, movement towards doing change of pleas with in-custody defendants remotely. We haven't done that by Zoom necessarily, but we have done it with our jail video. There is a meeting. Pam is going to meet with the criminal defense Patrick O'Connor, I think today, Pam, correct me if I'm wrong, but to explore the ability to perhaps Zoom on some criminal hearings with respect to remote appearances by lawyers. There's some pushback right now to having it appear in the courthouse, and whether we can make that work and on what calendars we can make that work. We're actively looking at that, whether it's arraignments, whether it's preliminary appearances, and so forth.
My follow-up there, sorry to interrupt you, but do you have the technology to do that? Do you have the technological capability, or would you need, upgraded systems of some kind? And is that something we could use CARES money to if the answer is yes? And there's one other piece I forgot, but I'll leave it with that.
So if I can real quick, we need more. If the judges decide if it's possible to add more Zoom capabilities to hearings, we need more equipment at main campus to accomplish that. IT has been helping us at FJC to secure equipment, but we're still short monitors in order to have a public view for the public coming in, and that connection from Zoom to that monitor, and also microphones for people that can't appear in any other way but in person. We would need the same things at main campus, and we currently only have 4 courtrooms that are equipped with monitors currently, and we are short, I believe, 3 courtrooms with cameras and monitors and microphones at main campus in order to make that happen. At FJC, we need family juvenile court. We need a conference room set up in order to utilize Skype for ITA hearings once we start our June 1 calendar. So Robin's kind of working on the facilities issues with me.
Okay, great.
IT is kind of aware of some of these issues. Some of the requests for additional equipment have not been made yet because we haven't determined what additional calendars we're adding remotely.
Pat O'Connor was talking about how the attorney and the client can go into the breakout room within the Zoom meeting and stuff like that, and it kind of boggles the mind. I mean, I was joking with him that the defense attorney whispering in his client's ear is kind of a hallmark of the criminal justice system. So it's hard to imagine how this is all going to work. But yeah, I'm glad to hear you guys are working it through. And if we can use money to help you, I'd love to do that.
Dave,
No, you're
hang on, Robin. Go ahead, Judge.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just going to add on to Ty's comment. There was on these remote change of plea hearings, we have a portion where the criminal defense attorney is on a cell phone with the defendant in the jail, and they have to he wanders off to the corner of the well of the courtroom and has kind of this conversation like this and the guy's on the cell phone. They mute it down there and they try to hide the words so you can't read. So yeah, it turns what we all have grown accustomed to with criminal hearings on its ear. So we're all trying to learn. It's
Like playing
a
baseball,
process.
covering the.
That's right, with your glove, right?
Go ahead, Robin.
I was just going to say, as far as the CARES money, to the extent that equipment is not already planned and in the budget, yes, it would be eligible. Court space, we think it might be eligible if we need to rent space elsewhere. We're definitely going to try to make it eligible. And then as we go through and see what the needs are, we're going to claim as much as we can.
Very good.
That's great news. And one of the things I talked with Robin and Romero about was, our deep concern about only being able to do one jury trial, and that we're open to whatever possibilities there are out there to expand a space. It doesn't have to be fancy. It has to be safe, obviously, but to try to come up with a way to both, handle additional trials, but also handle a large trial. Because right now, even with our large courtroom, we can't effectively do jury selection for a sex case or a murder case or a multi-week trial that requires a jury pool of up to 120, 130 people. You just can't get the number of people in a room at this point with any sort of distancing.
Go ahead, Gary. Go ahead, Gary.
I guess time is of the essence on this whole thing, because I think we have to spend it by the end of the year, don't we, Robin?
Yes, and that is the part of the challenge. The money that we have available now is only available until the end of this year. So if it extends on into next year, we're going to have to figure out a way to pay for it if Congress doesn't come through with more.
Now, is it they give us the money, or do we spend it and get reimbursed?
No, we spend it and get reimbursed. We're going to have a cash flow issue, but that's a completely different conversation.
Well, I was thinking if we have a project, whatever the project is, and it's funded, and the money's there to fund it, and we pay for this stuff, even though the work might not be done by the end of the year, we would still be able to qualify for the money.
Right. It's reimbursement means we can't pay for it until we receive the good or service. You can't pay ahead of time.
Can't pay ahead. Oh, okay. All right.
Good ideas, though. Keep them coming.
Yeah, I heard it. We like to stretch the rules here and there, but this is what I heard just a couple of days ago, that when you stretch a rule, no other rule really matters, does it? If you're stretching one. So I'm all for it, as long as we don't get in trouble. And it really takes care of a definite need that we have. Anybody else?
Yeah, maybe one other thing. I know the hotels are really suffering, so we might want to rent space until end of the year right next door at the Red Lion for jury selection rooms, for trial rooms.
That's part of the strategy.
Oh,
That is one of the calls we're making. Yep, we've contacted them. They already have some things booked in the rooms next door, but we're going to see what they do have available. We've also found some vacant space. Where is it? So the old Party City is completely vacant and clean, and about, I think Michael said, like 20,000 square feet. There's room at space available, and it is 27,000 or 20,000 square feet at the little strip mall that is gosh, what's in there? Home Goods or it's where
Yeah,
the
there's-
old Best Buy used to be.
Yeah,
Staples, you mean?
Yeah, Staples, yeah. So there's area in that space, if that would work. So we're
Well-
looking at anything that is a large open space to see what might work for you.
well, the Westfield Mall's still
Yeah.
closing down here and there,
It's
and
got a lot of space.
J.C. Penney's is circling the drain.
It's
Right
not
over
gone
here,
yet.
about a block away, I think the state has vacated quite a large office space about a block away here from Department of Licensing, I think.
Yeah, and we got that information, but is the retrofitting the space to accommodate the court's functions becomes an issue.
Right, and
And
these
not
are,
about perhaps the money, is the time
right, it's gotta
associated
be
with
ready
that.
to go fast. And
Yeah.
these are large spaces that are already out and open that we could easily set up for the court.
Right.
Am I pointing to you, Ty? On your screen, I'm not?
Yeah, you are.
Oh, okay, you're next. You had your hand up.
Oh, no, I probably was just scratching my face like I'm not supposed to.
Go ahead, Judge.
That was Robin.
The Brady Bunch thing, you have to look the right direction. From our perspective, it's, we're not experts in courthouse design, and we really appreciate the effort to find the space. And, the comment I had made earlier to Romero is that, we actually don't envision being able, even if we expanded beyond one trial at a time, to do any sort of civil trials in calendar year 2020. We just don't see how we could possibly get through a criminal backlog. So the criminal trials that we would be doing would be in custody likely, and would be the type of cases where security is important. So again, the design of the big large space is exactly I think what we're going to need. But there's a subsequent step of being able to design a courtroom space there that's got safety in mind. That's all we're asking for that, because we can't provide that, and I know that you all have heard that from us, and I know that you're doing it really thoughtfully, but that's the only thing I would add.
Hey, Judge, I realize, and I don't know if you have an answer to this, that when people can't settle a civil dispute, we're going to court. And so with the delay and the significant delay in civil trials, is that forcing people to go ahead and say, let's just wait and settle, get it done?
Well, I haven't seen, a lot of those things settle and we don't really see them. Maybe we'd see an order dismissing come across their desk. We haven't seen anything like that, or I haven't necessarily. I'm really interested look, it's not good news. It's horrible news that civil work, the civil trials won't happen, because sometimes those trial dates generate the settlement. It's the idea that, and so you put it off to 2021 or 2022, and all of a sudden the incentive for whoever might be the bad apple to settle the incentive is gone. But who knows? You might be right. It's the type of thing where, people might say, what the heck, we might as well just get along. The other thing too, from my experience, is when businesses and individuals have money or have difficulty with money, the last thing they're going to spend it on is lawyers. So, you might see less litigation behavior for that reason. My concern though is for all of those plaintiffs and defendants, the individuals who are really hurt and really need to access to the court, really need to have the ability to have these disputes. It's easy for us to say, well, criminal has the priority, family has priority, but there's an awful lot of people who get hurt by not having civil litigation and civil cases move forward. And, it's another, that category is another whole victim of this pandemic that, added to the long list of victims. But we can't forget that just because civil doesn't have the same constitutional ramifications, it doesn't really hurt people.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Anybody else? Pam, anything?
No, nothing to add. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Anything from anybody? Well, I think we're not just going to sit here until someone has something to say. We're done.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Your Honor.
Well, thank you again for having the opportunity and to update. Obviously, people are moving 100 miles an hour in their own little own little ways. And it's nice to be able to make sure that we all talk to each other as opposed to doing our things separately.
Absolutely. And thank you for taking the time with us today. We're here for you if you need us.
Great. Nice to
Thank
meet you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.